Hi, how are you? Still holding up? Great. So, before we start, quick question. Who's doing microservices? In production? Great. He just lowered his hand. So, who am I? I'm David. I'm from Germany, from Düsseldorf. That's my hometown. It's not black and white. It has colors. And you can find me with König Kotze everywhere. Don't ask what that means. Even on PlayStation, if you want to play FIFA, that's my handle. I work for Zenacor. We are a consultancy based in Germany. We do stuff, interesting stuff. If you want to know more, come to me after this talk. We have other things to cover. So, disclaimer. These are my opinions. They might be controversial. We will see to that. So, do not assume that I have sole knowledge of all these topics. If you are insulted, your fault. And anecdote is not evidence. Things I talk about here might work for you. They didn't work for us. This is not a theoretical talk. We did all those things. We are still doing those things on purpose. So, what's the story? This is dangerous. Your boss reads about microservices, worst thing. And he's like, yeah, Industry 4.0, yeah. Disrupt or be disrupted. And then extreme digital, cloud native, microservice, and agile. Sounds great. We want that. No reason why, but we want that. And he's like, IT people, whoosh, make it happen. I want those microservices. And who do we ask when we have questions? Who do you ask? Of course, Google. What the hell is a microservice, and why should I care? And the important part is, when you're looking at stuff like this, that button, that's key. I'm feeling so. And we get to pages like this. Microservices consist of user interfaces, independent, self-contained, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. Too long. I want to look at cat pictures. I want to use Twitter. I want to do stuff I don't want to read. Basic question, who wants to change? Like this CrossFit stuff, where you get lean and musculous. Do you prefer this or that? Imagine there with a cocktail enjoying the sunset. So, what we are talking about is a sabotage countdown. These are proven recipes to wreck your project. Do this and you will fail. Polyglot. Who is living in a polyglot company where you mix technologies? Oh, a couple of hands, nice. In Germany, there is a children's game. It's called Where's Waldo? Wo ist Waldo? And it looks like this, where you have all these people and you have to find this guy in the striped shirt. And this works for technology. So, real project, once again, we have Elixir and Phoenix and a microservice. Great stack. I love it. Totally productive. And then some JavaScript guys and girls join the project, and they use Angular, Happy, and MongoDB. Can't argue with that. It's cool. And then there are some Java developers who are using React, Spring Boot, and Neo4j. Who am I kidding? Who's using React? We obviously, it's Vue now. And we should not stop there. We can introduce Bower for building stuff, and as we are building, we can also use Gulp and Gradle and SBT and Maven and NPM and Webpack and Grunt. This is already a mess, all these building systems, but we can go one step further. Cloud age. Kubernetes, Docker, Terraform, Chef, and Puppet. And now you can ask, Chef and Puppet, they do the same thing, don't they? Yeah, that's the point. We introduce both. And why? Who knows William Wallace? Nobody, or one. He was a famous Scottish freedom fighter / terrorist, whatever you call him. And he actually believed in freedom of choice is important. So we need to choose our technologies, everybody. And you should never choose the same technology. That's polyglot. This leads to groundhog code. Like, who wants to deliver business value? I want to actually implement an OAuth stack in Elixir, in Node, in Java, in Kotlin, in Scala, and everything. It's far more interesting. You know, like your ledger implementation is boring. And there's a thing like a maintenance field trips. Just imagine you are the JavaScript implementer, and you have to join the Elixir team on a maintenance trip. So you can learn lots of new patterns, new languages, once again, without delivering business value. Totally cool, totally important, totally great for your CV. Think of recruitment. You can add Elixir and Node. And synergies. Who's using JavaScript? A couple of hands. So think of it. Beta status, user interface frameworks, like whatever, it's on vogue right now because I'm totally wrong right now. You can couple those. And social event, finding new friends on Stack Overflow. And if that works, we can always resort to semantic versioning. Who does not know what semantic versioning is? Everybody, a couple of hands, okay. You've seen that. That's just the thing with the 3 numbers, where the major version and in between the minor version and then the bug fix version. The important part is that major version indicates stability of your API. Keep that in mind when you look at a typical JavaScript project. That command allows you to list your dependencies and see if there are some version 0 dependencies in between. And you will find this. You see 0, 0, 0, 0. I firmly believe version 0 is the new version 1. So who cares about stability? That's why I don't call this polyglot. I call this poly WTF. Because you get this WTF each day when you join your company in the morning to fix bugs. Moving on to the event monolith. Who's using event sourcing? It's a hipster architecture style. Nice, a couple of hands. I give you the quick marketing pitch. Basic idea is great. Like with your ledger from your bank account, you have an event store that's immutable. That's really the important point, immutable. And you just add events to the end of the event store, like a ledger. Let's say you have a microservice like this customer microservice and a new customer address is updated. Instead of modifying an existing record, you just append this to the end of the store. Really great for traceability, really great for example, handling distributed data management. If there's another microservice who relies on this, the microservice can just consume that data and handle it. Great way of decoupling services. Gives you an audit trail for free. Totally cool. Distributed data management, handled off for free. You can optimize your microservices with CQRS. I won't go into that, that's a different talk. And much more, all for free. Unless, this is a true story. You don't know German, but this means is that beautiful Austria is no longer accepted as a standard country code. True story, we had this banking application where the country code was not an ISO field, but rather a string, accepting everything. And the colleagues from the bank really entered beautiful Austria as the country. Worked fine until we had to use that data. So what do? We can't change events. The easiest thing is the customer microservice, just add a snippet, unless it's ISO code, and fix things. Right? Cool, works. But we have to credit. Yeah. How to deal with shared code in a microservice environment. Who knows copy and own? Ever heard of that? Okay, we don't use libraries in microservice. We don't share code. But I've written a tool for Mac users. Who's using a Mac? A couple of hands. Windows version is coming soon. It's called copy and paste. Works great. And if you are paid by line of code, if that's your bonus, awesome. So it doesn't hurt anybody. We have this code, and we have this other microservice, and we just add this code. A couple of lines. Nobody's hurt, right? 2 months later, situation looks like this. Bop, 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 bop. And then we found the bug. Yeah, you can imagine the result. So wet is the new dry. Wet stands for we enjoy typing, if you don't know. Never question the design. That's why architects are here. That's why I'm an architect. I know best. I design my PowerPoints, consume them, be quiet. And every system should be event sourced, because even your crappy CRUD system for maintaining your CD collection should be event sourced, because once again, CV, recruiters, they love event sourcing. And that only works in German because eventual consistency means maybe consistent, eventuell consistent. Always great for business side. And that said, who's a Kafka fanboy or fangirl? No Kafka lovers here. Yeah, try using Kafka for event sourcing. That's awesome. You will spend 3 months setting up Kafka and then you'll fail. Great. And you all thought you would learn something, yeah? Let's talk about frameworks. Carl Sagan is one of my favorite scientists and science educators ever, and he always said that if you want to do microservices, you have to build a framework. Maybe paraphrased. So, who is guilty of developing a framework? Ah, come on, you're lying, just 3 hands. I don't believe you. So, we are doing event sourcing, remember? So what we did is we built a tiny event sourcing framework. Because reuse, yeah? Sounds reasonable. And the idea is that we can send events between services like this, where we have this type of, and the ID, which should be always a UID. There is no other reason for other things. And the payload, not so important. Unless business comes along. Business is our enemy. And they say the ID should be something special, non-numeric, something with meaning. Semantic versioning is our friend, right? We can do that. So we add a new version 2 customer, and we changed the ID. I don't know if you can read that because of lightning. We changed from UID to something else. We can do that, version 2, right? Semantic versioning. And at runtime, this is what I call a change the world event, like an atomic bomb. Because here's a status diagram of what happens, boom. Those two get the old event, the new event with the old event sourcing, and they blow up in your face. And you won't notice this until you go into production because you don't test. We've learned today testing is evil, remember. So the only thing that you can do is you can only upgrade the event sourcing framework at the same time, which fixes an important problem of microservices, independent releases. This is stressful. Releasing every 2 weeks. I don't want to do that. And this helps us to move to release monolith. And why is this a good thing? Any idea? Because of Twitter. That's Twitter time. You can't do anything new. You have to wait for this customer, and you can work on your... And being a consultant, don't forget, 3 services, 3 teams. What do you need for coordinating this? A manager. Managers are expensive, day rates, yay. So think about it like this. Dependencies are social tools. You get to know your team members, other team members. They will hate you, of course, because you broke the framework, and in today's world, with all the changing requirements, job insurance is really important. So build an invasive framework that nobody else can understand, and you will stay in job. And it's fun. And if you combine that with multi-languages, like you have event sourcing in Node and Kotlin, and you can build the same framework 20 times. Think about paid by line of code. Here are a couple of ideas. If you have already a event sourcing framework, collection frameworks are always great. String utils, logging for Java guys. We love our logging frameworks. And of course, leftpad. That's a cool thing. But let's say you don't have time to build an actual framework. What would be the fastest way to actually mess things up? Date formats. Never stick to a standard. I have no idea where I found those. I think it's MySQL and something else. Never pick a standard, invent your own, roll your own. Especially confusing things, like up on the left, where you don't know if it's the day or the month, 10th of 10, yeah, what is it? Actually, it's month and then day, because it's American. Who is running on the cloud? Any public cloud, on-premise, anything, OpenShift? Great. A couple of hands once again. Before we go into this, for those of you who want to go into consulting or something like this, here's a bonus tip for optimizing your revenue, day rates, yeah? Is anybody familiar with the WKPT paradigm? Obviously not, because it's mine. You have to separate people between who wants it to be done, who knows how to do this, who has the privileges, who has actually got the time for doing that. And why? Day rates. If you work in the financial industry, it's always like this. The admin just wants a Word document where you type down the command he has to type. Awesome. So, sidetrack. Let's talk about continuous delivery. Automating things from GitHub or wherever you're storing your source code into production is a good thing. Does anyone disagree? No. But what about the rest of the world? Is it just source code into production, or is there something more? Let's look at an example. This is or delivery pipeline on the left. But there's also the servers, the Docker host, our Mongos, our Kubernetes, our load balancer, and the Nginx. Would we automate all that stuff? No, of course not, because that's soulless. Nobody can be proud of that. On the other hand, we handcraft the right part with love. It's a piece of art. But now, if you're a smart owl, you say, what about cattle, not pets? Who knows this? Who doesn't know this, by the way? So it should be the majority. Cattle, not pets is the idea that instead of treating your servers like pets, which you tend to, which you maintain, you treat them like cattle. When they don't behave, you kill them. And you just start them. But that said, it's okay, it's an opinion. Whom do you love more? Mr. Whiskers? Or him? Just saying. Okay, we have that. We maintain things manually. That's really important. So how do we communicate with operations? Has anybody an idea how to communicate effectively with operations? Any idea? Yeah, nice. You listened. Let's take an example. The customer says, we need this new feature immediately. Quickly release the new microservice of customer. That's the who wants it to be done. And then obviously we have a DevOps team. Because nothing says DevOps more than a DevOps team. Well done. And communication is obviously tickets. How else should we do this? So we use Jira because effectiveness, who knows what to do? We say, hey ops guys, we need a new version. The route must be /customer for the Nginx configuration. And please, logging. And you see environment prod. And I'm not joking, we did this just 2 years ago. And the ops guy went, who knows the editor? It's obviously VI, huh? And he opened the default conf, that's the routing configuration for Nginx, and you might notice this. Yeah, and off we go to production because continuous delivery. And on the next slide, I have a picture of our Kibana dashboard at that moment. It looked like this. That was the product owner at the time. She hated us afterwards. Great. So infrastructure is expensive. If we make things look too simple, nobody will appreciate that. So take time, be proud. And if somebody asks, Microsoft Word has macros. That's automation. Huh? What do you want? And if there's some junior programmer asking, yeah, automate things, Terraform, we are not Google. Huh? I will get to polyglot ops later so we can have more fun there. So, the distributed monolith. This is common. That's my favorite pattern because everybody is doing this wrong. So once again, we have customer, credit, account, and authentication system. And the real case scenario is that not 3 microservices are 50 microservices. And all the microservices depend on the authentication microservice. Not controversial, right? Just an HTTP call. What could go wrong? I'll tell you. Business said, let's offer a discount to new users. No problem. New users arrive and they log into authentication, create a new account, everything is cool. Our authentication says, I can handle that, I'm good. And then more people arrive because we got a notification on some website. And the notification system is like, what the hell going on? And then we are really popular and the authentication system just goes boom, and along with it, customer, credit, and everything else goes rather boom. This is really cool because it's easy to build. This combines the best of both worlds, peanut butter and marmalade. You have the complexity of a microservice environment, service lookup and blah, 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 with the rigidity and the fragility of a monolith. And nobody actually sees it because it's just on a PowerPoint, it's just an arrow. So just assume network is reliable. If you go by train, you know network is reliable. And dependencies, who's using Spring? A couple of hands. You know dependency injection is a good thing. So dependencies must also be a good thing. Social engineering, right? And a system that's stable as concrete is great until concrete breaks. So it sounds even good on the slide. And debugging HTTP requests, that's totally easy. So why would you introduce circuit breakers? Makes no sense. So just stick with it. Who considers himself or herself an architect? Oh, great. Then we have to talk what an architect is. I'm a principal architect, so I know best, as I said. And every other day, this happens. There's some junior developer, and he says, let's already move to Java 7. And I'm like, whew, difficult decision. Beware developer madness. They read magazines, they listen to podcasts, they go to conferences, dangerous types. And they get back with ideas like blockchain, actors, cloud, augmented reality, agile. I'm missing testing here. And I've invented a tool for that as an architect. The first tool I've developed. It's the architecture and design sieve of sanity. Ideas go in, concepts come out. I'll tell you how this works. You use all these ideas, and then you go into an architecture offsite with other architects. And you wait a couple of seconds, and the best idea emerges. Up. That's how we work. Why would you do that? I'm a father of 3 children, teenage children and a little girl, and weekends are frustrating. And you come to work, and there's some guy or some girl with a great idea, and you can just stop them in their tracks, frustrate them, and you see the stress leaving your body. It's totally cool. And if there's some motivated colleague that actually wants to change things, you can irritate them so they leave your company really quick. That's cool. And if you're too fast, and if you are older than 30 like I am, this is real enterprise. This is not some startup. We do things the right way. Speaking of ivory towers, those are beautiful. Now let's get serious. This was all fun, but let's talk about business. Seriously, they know nothing. Right? If they were smart, they would be programmers. Huh? So why should we explain anything? So when we're moving to a microservice landscape, obviously we developers decide how to split our systems because reasons. So we go in and we create credit microservice, account microservice, payment microservice, and we don't tell anybody. For the business colleague, that's just some convoluted system doing things. And if there's a requirement like, let's force the user to always enter a valid address that we can check. It's totally easy to implement until a second product owner comes along. And she said, no, the customer should be able to use partial addresses, maybe for some house that's going to be constructed, which doesn't have a house number. So how would they deal with those conflicting requirements if they don't know the microservice landscape beneath? They just know this big box. You know why this is cool? Because of requirements ping pong. While they are figuring out what to do, you can sit back, relax, play Kicker, Twitter, modify your CV, Kafka. And once again, if you are in the consulting industry, you need change management and requirements management, which leads to day rates. By the way, works with ops too, and this is a true story. We had this same microservice landscape, and operations wasn't aware of that. They just knew we had this stuff, and we had to go into production with a couple of microservices. And those colleagues just saw the thing, and they say, screw it. It's Friday afternoon, let's deploy everything. And that was on a Friday because reasons, and everything blew up. That's what I call the water scrum fall. Business and ops, really slow, and we as developers going fast against the wall in the wrong direction. So avoid cross-functional teams. We don't like ops, we don't like business, we don't mix. Slow, more time for Twitter. The internet doesn't serve itself. Huh? And as always, if the first product owner asks, why are you not working on this feature? You can always say, the other product owner asked me to do things differently, and you can play them in both directions because they hate each other, so great. And Conway's law, I won't go into it. You can use it for your own purposes. Who has an HR department in his or her company? Everybody does. Yeah, they're great. So things are easy. It's easier to search for React developers or Kotlin developers instead for craftsmen or craftswomen. And working in the industry for too long, I've seen this all the time, where this is the map of Germany. By the way, I am from here. And although Düsseldorf is far more beautiful than Cologne, Cologne is shown on the map. I think that's just trolling. So business is in Hamburg. Once again, actual case. Bank, Hamburg. And they located their front-end development in Dresden. And service development in Munich, because of Weissbier, I guess. Testing in Krakow, because beautiful inner city. And DevOps team in Frankfurt, because I guess Amazon has a region set up there. So that's the only reason I think. And you might ask, why? Easy answer. Frequent flyer program, rail bonus program, hotel credit points. Somebody has to collect those, and that should be me. So how can you set up this team and make it not work in spite of all the distance? So how do you communicate? How do you what are you using in the communication field between your teams? HipChat, Slack, okay. No, that's not good. Always communicate using templates and Word documents. That's the first thing. You don't communicate your REST interface to the UI guy by talking to him or her. Just send them a PowerPoint or a Word document and say, that's it. Then you have to protect the teams. That's front-end team, service team, persistent stuff. And you establish walls. But how do you handle those interactions? Bureaucracy to our aid. That's where the product owner comes in, where you have the front-end product owner and the service product owner and the database product owner. Once again, day rates. Those are my guys. But what if that works? This could work. Then you need the stakeholder. Stakeholder is a technical term for a person that poses as your stakeholder who has never actually spoken to any user and who doesn't care about the system, but who has a strong opinion. Also called a hippo. Also known as a shadow product owner or proxy product owner. We have all dealt with those guys. So how does it work? We have those product owners from the slide before. We establish a UX product owner and the back product owner, and on top of that, the business owner. And now the important part. They cannot decide anything, but they have to go up into the hierarchy, and she doesn't care. So great. This even sounds agile. But are there technical benefits? Of course there are. Once again, our 3 teams, they are building stuff. We have shared stability because you can't do anything without the other parts. Everything has to go into production at the same time, so no releasing on the weekends or stuff like this. And speaking of domain, where's the domain? Because everything breaks down in between. So, programmers do not like other people. That's why we program. We hate people. Finding the domain makes fun. It's a fine. Let's do mob finding the domain. It's only, and I'm married, so when I get home in late night, I tell my wife, I have been to a war room because our system broke down. She's totally impressed. If I tell her I was unit testing Node applications, she's like, oh, why did I marry him? So war rooms, cool. Never take ownership. Ownership is responsibility. So, and the cool part, how do we deal with bugs? Multiple teams, how do we deal with that? Of course, it's always the other team's fault. So cool. So moving to a new pattern, it's an alpha pattern. I've seen this just twice in other large-scale projects, and of course we've repeated the errors and the mistakes. Why do we go into the cloud? Because we want to be agile with our deployments, we want to be flexible, we scale as we grow, and blah, 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 blah. Doesn't care, I don't care about this, I care about the OSFA cloud. Have you been using that? Anybody? No? That's the one-size-fits-all approach, where some architect, no matter what you are building, you have to use this thing. It's totally cool, because we are building a Rails application for just 200 users, not at the same time, distributed across a month. But we might just become the next Google, huh? Who knows? So enter the DevOps team again. I'm joking. The Cloud Ops team. How do we orchestrate microservices? Any opinion? How would we deal with microservices on large scale? Are you guys, you're kidding me. You should be sitting next door learning something real. Obviously, Kubernetes. Who's using that? Kubernetes? Couple of frustrated hands. You're among friends. So how does it work? We take our application, put it in a Docker context, and then next we know is there's a node, and you see our Docker with the Rails application, a pod, you have things, and then you go to AWS, and you have all those other things, and yellow boxes, sounds great. And just to remember you, this is what we care about, yeah? All the other crap you have to know because it breaks down. And it did break down, namely with this thing. We went live, and we had 3 billion lines of just garbage like this, just log output. I just give you an example. Blip, blip, blip. Here, speaking of timestamps, I guess. Memory C group out of memory, kill process 2340, cube stat, middle score, blip, 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 or sacrifice child. Obviously works for ops too. And if you need help deciding which tools to use, there's this great sheet from Xavier Labs. Just pick a Dart file, Dart arrow, and just throw it against the sheet and you'll, hey, Kubernetes or Heroku or whatever. It's fun. It's all fun and good. So be proud of complexity. We are engineers. And this ops tooling, the stability like COPS or Helm and Tiller, the JavaScript is nothing. And obviously, if Twitter uses this, your small shop should too, because. And just think about combining this complexity with the meat cloud, manual operations. You won't get anything done for weeks. So, moving along, speedboat and tankers. This is at least controversial because this might work. You might know this as bimodal IT. Anybody ever heard of that? Nobody. Okay, so that's a German thing, obviously. It's a McKinsey thing, actually. The reason is some guy or some girl just realized we need a 24/7 digital experience way for our customers. But our host is down at least 4 hours per week. What can we do? And the idea is the bimodal ID, where you split between systems of engagement, that's this nice cake, and systems of record, a graveyard, a dark place. From an architecture point of view, you have this field of mud. You do not want to be him, I guess, unless you like mud. And a nice lawn. Green field, you get the idea. This might work. Danger. So we have to establish a wall of innovation. Cool things happen on the left-hand side, and the right-hand side, he's dirty. So we built our speedboats on the left-hand side, which we can bring into production really fast, and we leave the old thing rotting. Cool, because that's struts. That's Node.js, struts. You don't want to do struts. And the important part is to realize not only that this is struts, but this is written by people you don't know, and you probably don't like, because people, we don't like them. And ignoring reality is really important, because otherwise you might realize that your speedboats need data from the crappy backend at some point in the future, because there might be a reason that this thing has been built. So ignore that. So then we can draw graphs like this. And this is cool for management because it sounds really, really fast. We start 1st of March, 1st of April, done. Good job. But not without us, because we can introduce our dirty backend. And this thing takes a little longer, namely there. And once again, this is Twitter time. Actually, 17 years of Twitter. I might work on the dates. So what's the result? The result is just you have your dirty old legacy system which you have to maintain, which takes time, which takes effort, and you have a new landscape built by people like me, by consultants. And what happens 5 years later when I'm gone and another consultancy arrives? You get a very new landscape. This is struts. This is Node.js, and I guess this would be Clojure, or what is hip today. Clojure, I guess, yeah. And the important part to realize is that this is the people deprecation gradient, because they are jealous that they can't work on this stuff, and they are jealous because they can't work on this part. That is totally cool. Makes working there totally nice. And of course, we have the tech stack hipness gradient. So you do not want to work there. You always want to work on the left-hand side. That's the CV part. That's getting fired part. So you want to be on the left-hand side. So if you watch the previous talk, you know refactoring is just too hard, not worth it. Yeah, so let's maintain another system. It's cool. And instead of actually building up internal skill and teaching people that know Java how to code in JavaScript or in Python, let's fire them and just train consultants like myself. I appreciate the effort. And on the other hand, you can distinguish between cool developers and struts developers openly, because it's in the process. And this leads to a really hostile environment where everybody just not trusts the new developers versus the old developers because they might take my job. Everything will break down. Best tip, if you want to work in an environment where you can't deliver anything, bimodal IT is your thing to go. And this is really all there is to this talk. We are really fast, I see, on this timesheet. That's good. So microservices are just too hard and not worth it. I've seen so many talks. It's like always a loop in our industry. Hey, microservices, the hype. If you don't do it, you will die. And now it's like, oh, your monolith is really great. So that's cool, because we are staying with the monolith, right? But the key is the hidden monolith. If you try to sabotage your project, like inserting crappy code, you will be found out because you're using SonarQube or whatever. Using architectural patterns like event sourcing with Kafka, you will think you are awesome because Kafka, and then you will realize, oh my God, worst decision of my life. Like going to KFC. And we don't talk to ops or business. Never. We hate those girls and guys. Absolutely. No way. The important part is to realize that monoliths start in your head. You have to actually think in a monolithic way. How to break things, how to couple things. Like sharing code by copy and owning. And then you have to deal with what if a bug appears and you have to fix 20 systems. That's a really good way of dealing with your day if you're bored, like there's no news on Twitter. So think about processes, think about coupling technologies, think about choosing the worst thing you can ever do. And I maybe come to an end. Thank you. Questions? I don't think so.